Good morning, Willowbrook. Today we're in John chapter 21. This is the last chapter in the book of John. It is considered an epilogue. So chapter 20 kind of finishes up the story and it rounds out the intent for the book of John, which is to prove that Jesus is the Son of God. It's laying out the evidence that says he is the Son of God, and he does a great job of doing that. And if you've been reading along with us, you're seeing that. The book of John is one of those that says Jesus is the Son of God. And then chapter 21 says, but wait, there's more. And in this part of the story, this is where John is telling about a time when Jesus appears on the shore after Peter and 6 other disciples have been fishing all night. So there are 7 disciples, they've been fishing all night. They are discouraged, they haven't caught anything. They're probably very tired, very hungry. And they're coming up to the shore and they see this man, and they don't initially recognize him until he says, have you caught any fish? And they say no. And he says, well, cast your net on the other side of the boat. And they do. And they bring in so many fish they can hardly hold the net. And then John recognizes Jesus. And as soon as he says, that's Jesus, and he recognizes him because he's done this before. He has helped them catch fish before. And so John recognizes Jesus, and Peter jumps out of the boat and he goes to where Jesus is. And Jesus says, hey, let's have some breakfast. There's a fire there. They cook some food. They cook some of the fish they just brought in. And so they're having this moment. And then Jesus calls Peter into a conversation where he says, do you love me? And Peter says, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. And Jesus says, then take care of my lambs. And then he asks him a second time, Peter, do you love me? Actually, he doesn't call him Peter. He calls him son of John. And he says, do you love me? And he says, you know that I do. And then Jesus says, then take care of my sheep. And then he asks him a third time, which at this point, Peter's getting a little bit frustrated. I don't think he's frustrated with Jesus. Some say that he might be a little bit frustrated because it's reminiscent of he denied Jesus 3 times. And that kind of hit that sore spot for him where he's having to deal with the 3 denials. But this third time, Jesus asks this question, Peter, do you love me? And Peter says, yes, you know everything. You know that I love you. And Jesus says, then feed my sheep. And then he goes on to talk to Peter about, he says, basically the next verse where he says, when you're young, you do what you want to do. But when you're old, you're going to stretch out your arms. And that's period speak for you're going to be crucified, but you're going to be older. And so Peter knows how he's going to die. And then it wraps up with Peter looking at John and saying, well, what about him? And Jesus' response is, what is that to you? How John dies, however John lives or dies is not your business, basically. And he says, you need to be focused. And he asks Peter once again, in the course of that conversation, he says, follow me. After he tells him, you're going to die a certain kind of way, which is the same way Christ died, except Peter said, let me do it upside down because he wasn't worthy to be killed in the same way as Christ. It's whenever that time comes. But he says, follow me. And so to me, what I see here is Jesus met Peter where he was uncertain. Peter went fishing because it's what he knew. He's in this in-between time. He'd lived 3 years watching this ministry of Jesus and being part of this. And then Jesus is crucified and resurrects, and he's seeing him less and less, and the Holy Spirit hasn't come yet. And I think he's in this, I don't know what's next. So he goes fishing. That's what he knows. That's what he does. That's how he provides for his family. And in that moment of uncertainty where he may be thinking this experience had to mean something, then there's Jesus. And to me, that would be exciting. I'd be like, oh, hey, there you are. What's next? What's up? But Peter just wanted to be where Jesus was. And I think that it's important to note that Jesus met Peter in his uncertainty there on the shore. He met him in his discouragement. He met his physical need for hunger because he was going to ask Peter some hard questions. And I think that what I see about this is not only are we supposed to believe that Jesus is the Son of God. I mean, it's clear that he is the Son of God. So believe that. More importantly, is that enough for you to love him as well? Not just believe, but love him and serve him. And that's what Peter is having to face in this conversation with Jesus. And Jesus is not asking him 3 times because he's not paying attention. He's not asking him just to be ornery. He's asking Peter because he wants Peter to look at his own heart and understand, what does it mean to love Jesus, not just believe that he's the Son of God, but to love Jesus, because then he says, follow me. And when he says, follow me, it means something very different this time than it did the first time he asked. Because now Jesus has fulfilled the crucifixion and the resurrection, and follow me means something very different. It means sacrificial service. It means humbling yourself to the work that God has for you. So this chapter calls us to evaluate how we love Jesus, not just believe that he's the Son of God, but how are we going to engage in what that means for us and who we are. He turns shame into purpose. And if we let him, he turns our discouragement into productivity. He turns us from fishermen into shepherds. That's what he did for Peter. He was like, you're not going to be a fisherman anymore. I need you to feed my sheep. That's shepherd work. It's a little bit harder work. And it's going to require a devoted and committed love. And that's what Jesus is calling us to. And this connects those dots, not just for us to evaluate our own hearts and how we love Jesus, not just believe that he's the Son of God, but love him to the point of sacrificial service. But also it connects the dots where Peter is about to become a very critical and important part in the building of the church, just like Jesus said he would be. So we're about to go into Acts, and that's when the church is beginning, and it's an exciting time. It's when the Holy Spirit is going to come, and so many things are going to make more sense. And this is such a wonderful time for us to pause and say, okay, Jesus died for me. He came back, he resurrected, and then this is where we pause and go, okay, what does that mean for me? Because when we receive the power of the Holy Spirit, we are able to do so much more for the kingdom. So evaluate your love. Not just do I believe that Jesus is the Son of God, but do I love him enough to follow him in sacrificial service that glorifies God and helps others see the goodness and the purpose of anything that we go through is made meaningful whenever we're connected to Christ. Willowbrook, I hope you have a wonderful day today. I hope you're able to really study this and enjoy it. Thank you so much for being on this journey with us in these Devos.